Greetings, citizens, and welcome to Unknown. I'm Jason McClellan. I'm here with Maureen Elsberry, Shane Hurd, and Ryan Sprague, and we're happy you're hanging out with us today. Another week has passed, and that means we have another episode of Project Blue Book to talk about today. If you're not aware, there's a new dramatic series on history titled Project Blue Book, named, of course, after the U.S. Air Force's official UFO study that ran from 1952 through 1969. Project Blue Book, the show, is a fictional show based on this real study and focuses largely on Dr. J. Allen Hynek, who served as a scientific advisor to the government Project Blue Book, and its predecessors also, Project Sign and Project Grudge. 2 episodes of Project Blue Book have aired as of the date we're recording this episode of Unknown, and the real cases the show has explored so far are the Gorman UFO dogfight of 1948 and the Flatwoods Monster of 1952. We talked about the Gorman case on the previous episode, and today we're going to discuss the Flatwoods Monster case. So guys, before we share our personal thoughts of Project Blue Book's take on the Flatwood Monster, Maureen, go ahead and give us a brief overview of the real case of the Flatwoods Monster.
Sure. So this kind of happened during the height of sort of a UFO scare going on. Obviously, we had these cases that we discussed last week in the 40s, and now we're into the 50s. I mean, this is also the time where, you know, there's atomic bomb testing and scares, and people are on high alert, so to speak. So this happened in September 12th, 1952 in Flatwoods, West Virginia in Braxton County. It was about a 7:15 in the evening, and there were a bunch of boys playing at the park. They alleged that they saw basically a silver dollar, they kind of said flying saucer, fly across the sky that was emitting like bursts of red balls of fire, basically. Some people just describe it as a red ball of fire. There's varying reports throughout this whole case. So the 2 brothers, they were... I'm going to guess that they were about 12 and 13, somewhere around that age. And their friend, Tommy, ran to their mother's house. They got this woman, Kathleen May, and then 3 additional boys and a dog. They went to go investigate what they saw fly over this hill and disappear, which they assumed this object had crashed. So the story goes that the boys and the mother ran up over this hill. There was a fog or some kind of mist that smelled really pungent, like nasty, really irritant. And then
kind of like Ryan's apartment.
Right, exactly. So again, this is a spot where there are some varying reports. Some of the witnesses saw this, some did not. They alleged that they saw a big globular sphere-like object, and it was pulsing shades of red and orange intermittently, and they were paying attention to that. And that's at the moment that the oldest boy, 17-year-old Gene Lemon, shined a flashlight, and much to their horror, they spotted these glowing eyes and this 10-foot monster staring back at them. Again, the witnesses have varying reports of what the creature looked like, but the most general one was that it was these glowing green, yellow eyes, a red, like blood red face, and it had some sort of like, it's often described as the shape of an ace, like hood.
And claw-like hands.
Well, again, that's only with some.
Okay.
Kathleen May suggested for sure that it had claw-like hands. Some of the boys said there were no hands. Some said that it was wearing a green outfit. Some said they couldn't see any color from the neck down, however. You know, they run down the hill in terror, and they're absolutely terrified. And they try to report this, but the sheriff was away investigating another alleged plane crash close by, weirdly enough. So, they had some paramedics on the scene treating them for bruises and scratches. This guy from the Braxton Democrats comes out and he goes to investigate and sees nothing, but he says that he got his face really close to the ground and could smell an odor. So anyways, when the sheriff gets there, there's nothing. Some people go back the next day. They see what they say are skid marks on the ground and some reports of some sort of weird, oily, gummy substance on the ground. Blah, blah, blah. Some people think it was just tire tracks. We'll see. Anyway, so one of the most famous UFO authors in this time, or actually this is kind of what got him started, Gray Barker, you all know of, he went out and interviewed the witnesses and found out that there had been strange lights spotted in the sky over half the country, Ohio and Washington, D.C. and all these other places. So here we have this now town hysteria of the small town where there's a 10-foot monster. Is it there? There are some reports that some people saw an object taking off afterwards. There's lots of a lot of varying tidbits. But anyways, this ended up becoming a case investigated by Project Blue Book. At the very end of everything, basically, much like in the episode of Project Blue Book, it was the final skeptic opinion of it was that it was an owl in a tree, and that when the owl or the object hissed and started gliding towards them, that again, it was like I think it was a barn owl or something, that it was just flying off the tree towards them. So this is a very controversial case, but has brought a lot of money to the town of Flatwoods. So I don't know what your guys' opinion on the case is. It's very easy to say, hey, yeah, maybe this could be a meteor shower that was happening, and that's what they spotted, or the red pulsing object they saw was some sort of navigation device from a plane or something, and we have an owl in the woods. But these people are now the surviving members are in their 70s or so now, and they're sticking firm that what they saw was not an owl in the trees.
Yeah. So what's your take on the Flatwoods Monster case, Shane, as just historically the Flatwoods Monster case, not how it was portrayed in Project Blue Book, but the actual case? Have you given that case much thought?
Yeah, I actually wasn't completely familiar with it. I just heard about it until the Blue Book show. And then, of course, I kind of jumped in and read about it. And it's kind of interesting how, I don't know how strong a case it is, evidentiary or anything, but it just, I'm kind of impressed with how much attention it got at the time. I mean, pretty much nationwide coverage, and it was just really the testimony of these people involved, and really nothing from a physical evidence standpoint, but it really got a lot of attention. So I don't know if that was due to just the heightened attention on UFOs in general, particularly in 1952, like Maureen was mentioning. It was Cold War. And, of course, there was the UFO flap over the Capitol and just a lot of stuff going on then. So imagine everything got some attention. But, yeah, I was surprised how much this one got. But a lot of people say this is like a classic case. And of course, Gray Barker getting his start there. So, historically, it's pretty interesting, actually.
What do you think of Flatwoods Monster, Ryan?
I think it's terrifying. If any of it is true, yeah, like that, just the way it's described. That's another thing. Like, there's a lot of varying descriptions of the monster itself, but also of like what actually crashed or was seen over the town. That part always stuck out to me most was this idea of the crash and people being on high alert and being terrified of anything in the skies at this point. It's definitely a case that will forever be I feel like it's in that folklore sort of area of this entire UFO history. I don't know what I personally make of it, but these people were definitely terrified. I mean, witnesses said that like one of the witnesses peed their pants at the time.
Yes, that's true.
Which I thought was pretty funny.
I would have done that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Same here. Yeah. So the way it was portrayed in the show was completely different, and I'm sure we'll get to that. But it is definitely a case that I always look at and have a smirk on my face.
Yeah, it's a fun one.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely it is. And I think by and large, it can still be in that sort of like question mark category too. Something this case always does for me, it highlights witness testimony, and how the many levels on which witness testimony is interesting, because here we see demonstrated to us how widely witness testimony can vary. These people were there, they saw the same thing, but they describe it in different ways. And that is very normal with witness testimony. That's what's going to happen. I mean, the four of us right now, if we were all in the same room and we saw something outside and we ran outside and looked, 30 minutes later, retelling the story, we'd all have a slightly varied take on the same thing. So that's human nature. It's cool to see that displayed here in this case. The other thing is just the adamant nature of people standing by their interpretation of what they saw, right? And that's always fantastic in cases like this, when you're dealing with strange topics, UFOs, monsters, things like that. When you have witnesses who describe what they saw, but years later, they stand by that story. That tells you a lot too, in the sense that even facing ridicule in this case and being labeled a nut, for sure. I mean, you certainly sound like one. And even if, after the government coming up with an explanation of something as silly as an owl, still standing by the story, that says a lot about how firm these people are and confident they are in what they saw. So I love seeing that and hearing that with witness testimony, because on one hand, you have to understand what witness testimony is and how valuable it is or isn't in a case.
I was going to say that's something really pertinent that we see Gray Barker doing in his investigations. Obviously he's a controversial figure who later, was like, people were saying, oh, he was actually claimed he was kind of hoaxing stuff, or not hoaxing, but making stuff up, or he's just in it for the money or whatever, extreme skeptic. But one thing he did right is he interviewed each of the witnesses separately and really worked on trying to triangulate similarities and differences in all of their testimony to see, do we have some faulty things going on, or is there some truth behind this? Of course, like you said, we're all going to have varying testimony, but it's those points that have to line up close enough to make something like, okay, well, they probably were there together, that they saw something. But yeah, and that's pretty much the conclusion is these people were genuinely terrified. They genuinely saw something, but what it was, if only the dog could talk.
Yeah, exactly. Poor dog. Yeah, I think the dog died too. Yeah.
Yeah, the dog died.
That's the saddest part of this whole story.
I know. If there's anything we've learned, it's don't get a dog too close to a UFO.
That's right. I mean,
or a monster.
Or an owl. Owls eat dogs.
That's right. That's right. They do. Yes, they do. No, owls are cute and wonderful, and I would like to cuddle an owl, but they're enemies of dogs and cats for sure. All right, let's stop being sad here. Shift back to History Show Project Blue Book. So, what did you think of the show's version of the Flatwoods Monster case, Ryan?
So I found it really compelling because, I'd written a little bit and researched Flatwoods, and I always thought it laid in that kind of folkloric camp. But when I saw that Blue Book was covering it, I actually had to go back and be like, wait, did they actually investigate the Flatwoods Monster? I had no idea. So when this episode came about, I was like, I really want to see how they tackle such a sensational case for the second episode. With the first episode of the Fuller dogfight, I'm like, yeah, that makes perfect sense. It's it's legit. It could very well have happened. But then this one, I was like, did they jump the gun a little bit? But the way they handled it, and then when Hynek comes up with the owl conclusion in the show's narrative, I totally could see it. But again, the things that these people described, it seems way too big to have been an owl, or I don't know. But I thought it was good. I loved the episode. I I felt bad that the dog had to die in the episode too. But I didn't know if you guys knew anything. Was there actually like radiation sickness with any of the witnesses like the show portrayed?
No, I don't believe so. I think that like the only paramedic stuff that was reported was cuts and scrapes from like running down the hill.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So that was definitely added for the show, which I understand. But yeah, I found that compelling as well.
That's creative license, and I don't have a problem with them throwing that in there because, again, the writers of the show and the creators are very well versed on, you know, UFO cases and UFO lore and other things. So they only have a certain number of shows they're working with, and I think they're trying to incorporate a lot of UFO stuff into their shows. And so taking elements from other cases and incorporating them into, you know, a different case, I think is probably what's happening with a lot of what we're seeing portrayed in these shows. So, you know, certainly there are other fantastic cases where we do have exposure to radiation and physical effects on people. So I kind of get them throwing that in there because it does make for great TV.
Yeah, but I actually was a little bit disappointed with their their creature.
Sure.
I thought it looked really meh. And, you know, obviously they had the whole forest burning down. And it kind of looked like a little bit more like a fairy tale joke. I mean, don't get me wrong. The actual original drawing of what they saw in Flatwoods looks like a joke. But
it's like Alice in Wonderland.
Or
a 50s B movie.
Yeah. An interesting thing, though, is after the episode aired, you know, I went back and was like, you know what? I kind of want to catch up on this case again to see where the differences were. Because it's been a long time since I'm familiar with the case, but it had been a while. So
yeah, for all of us.
I reread the original Fate article that Gray Barker wrote.
Yeah.
And if you open it up, the artwork on that article of the monster at the top, like not the actual drawings, but just the magazine's like fun little monster climb thing at the top, looks relatively similar to the way they depicted it. I'll personally send you guys a clip of this, or I'll just send you the article. But yeah, it is kind of interesting. I'll take a screenshot and share it.
It is.
Please do.
And I want to, point out that the creators of the show have addressed this sort of issue with the show in that they obviously didn't obtain the rights for absolutely everything that they're covering, all of the people, the characters. That's why, you know, they're working with J. Allen Hynek as an actual character, but the other characters are loosely based on real people, and we can figure out who they are, but they didn't obtain the rights to, you know, have these named characters. And that's certainly the case with some of the other stuff too. I'm suspecting that's the case with the artwork, you know, the likeness of the Flatwoods Monster that was depicted. So they had to come up with their own thing. So do be aware of that in the show, that, you know, it comes down to a rights issue and they're having to be a little creative with some of the things that they're portraying in this show to avoid lawsuits.
Same with and same with the time period too, Jason. I mean, we have a linear TV show that we're doing like week to week, case to case, and we're following like a story arc. So everything has to be sort of sequential. And you know, we know like Fuller case happened 48, this happened 52. Like the show itself doesn't jump all the way to 52 to cover this case. So I think a lot of people have to look at that too. So I love what they're doing with giving us the actual case after with like Dolan and Valet and all that too. Sorry, Shane, go ahead.
No, that's okay. That's cool. I also was kind of wondering, you know how X-Files, I don't want to keep making that comparison, but X-Files, they used to have like a monster of the week kind of episode, and then they carried the overall theme and arc throughout that thing. And I'm not sure if that's what they're going to do or not. I've only seen these 2 episodes, and like you say, the first one was, you know, straight up, you know, nuts and bolts UFO kind of thing, where this one seemed to be more kind of like on the, you know, monster side, or a little more fantastic. And I don't know if they're going to play with that, go back and forth, if they pick their cases that way or not. But that's kind of what I'm looking for as I see this thing unfold, is kind of making those comparisons, because it's really fun. I mean, the characters are developing well, and some of these ancillary storylines going on around it. It'll just be interesting to see how this thing ties together and how they thread that throughout the entire season.
I know, and that makes me a little disappointed, because I kind of have a pretty good feeling that they're going to skip over not do the Kelly Hopkinsville case now, because they covered this one, and that one happened in 55 right afterwards. We'll get more into that case later, I know, But yeah, that's a little bit of a disappointment, because I always love reenactments of that case.
Yeah,
it
me
is
too.
The best and most hilarious. No offense to the people that went through it. I know that wasn't hilarious for them. I don't mean it like that. But the reenactments that have so far been portrayed on TV and documentaries are pure gold. But yeah, do me a favor. I sent you guys that picture. You look at it and tell me if that's not closer to the Project Blue Book depiction. Sorry, audience, I know you can't see this.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, monster in the saucer. Wow.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
So I wonder if they kind of like looked at that.
I'm sure they did
in their research, and that's.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, that's one thing. Like, no matter if things are inaccurate, they are definitely doing their research on all this. There's that new Sci-Fi Wire podcast that follows each episode with the creators, and you can just tell, you can hear the passion and the hunger in what they're talking about, and they bring up like so much of what we talk about as well. It's not just entertainment. They're trying to get these cases out so that you can go look at it like we are after every episode and see what actually happened.
I'm glad you brought up that show, Ryan. It's a really good podcast, and it really does a fantastic job of giving you that insight into the decisions they're making, and their thought processes, and where they are, and their journey of exploration, dealing with all this, and hearing the actors, and how their viewpoints have changed being involved in this, and how deep they've gone down the rabbit hole themselves. I mean, it's a really cool insider's look. So I think that podcast is so much fun if you're interested in this show, to get a little more in-depth knowledge behind the show. And thanks for bringing up, Ryan, the thing about what history is doing with this show. I mean, we've talked about it, but yeah, as they did with the premiere episode of Project Blue Book, history provides information about the real cases they use for inspiration right on the network's website. And additionally, they're showing the info immediately following the episodes when they air on television. That's really cool. And I think a lot of people who have been skeptical of this show because it's not a documentary, a true to life retelling of Project Blue Book, haven't given the show a fair shake, I don't think. And I think they're expecting it to be something it's not. But I think, again, history is doing a really good job of, having their fun with it, making this entertaining, having their fictional show based on reality, but then right after telling you the real case that inspired it. That's so responsible and just awesome of them to do.
I think so. And a lot of detractors are saying like, oh, they're stepping back and they're doing this now because everyone's complaining of how inaccurate it is. Well, I mean, I know for a fact that they had planned on doing that long before production even.
Right.
So, this was all planned. It was strategic, and they do want to get the real stories out there. So I'm going to keep watching and then going back like we did today and look at the actual case and see how it compares. It's fun. It's fun.
I mean, hey, if it's good enough for Jacques Vallée, I mean, people need to chill out, right?
Exactly.
He's the final word.
Yeah. Well, the third episode of Project Blue Book airs on January 22nd, and that episode will tackle a fascinating and well-known UFO case known as the Lubbock Lights. I'm looking forward to that one.
Ooh.
Yeah, me too.
Yes.
And
I have no idea what the episodes are, so this is like a little surprise each time.
Yeah, it's fun. No, keep it fun. And they've been really excited about Lubbock Lights too. I mean, they've used it heavily in their promotion materials for this show, including the little inserts they've been including in the New York Times print editions, and in the press kits, and they've really been pushing the Lubbock Lights. So I can't wait to see what they do with that. Well, another series that we want to briefly mention is Hellier. So on Friday, January 18th, paranormal media company Planet Weird released this new series titled Hellier. The series follows the veteran paranormal husband and wife team of Dana and Greg Newkirk as they and fellow investigators travel into the shadows of the Appalachian Mountains on a fascinating and thrilling journey fueled by curious synchronicities, mysterious figures, and frightened locals with tales of goblin-like creatures emerging from mine shafts and the vast cave systems in the region. And Ryan, you recently interviewed the director of this series on your show, Somewhere in the Skies, right?
Yes, I did. Yeah, Carl Pfeiffer.
Yeah, so...
former Ghost Hunters International and Ghost Hunters Academy, I believe, veteran.
Yeah, I think so. So there is just like a paranormal investigation powerhouse behind this show, and people who are very familiar with all sorts of strange things. So, Maureen, I'm curious to hear what you thought of Hellier.
So I thought it was really fun, like I've been waiting for something on this investigation since back in, I don't know, we talked to Greg and Dana back in 2015 or something about this case. And that was when they were filming a television show had contacted them to film a pilot. So that was at that stage. But then they took it upon themselves when that ended up not becoming, a show or a thing in which they are better off for doing as well, I think. To get this group together and go out and there are so many little weird, this is the number one word you're going to hear throughout the whole series, synchronicities. There's so many weird things that happen to them that kind of like tie things in. And oddly enough, I don't know if they planned this, but there are a ton of links to, John Keel and the Mothman Prophecy, Mount Pleasant, and, which is also West Virginia, and the Kentucky Hopkinsville, Kelly Hopkinsville, man, I can't talk today, obviously, case. And so many weird things. So it was kind of funny that the episode on the Flatwoods Monster aired this week, and then this came out right afterwards. Yeah. There's just a ton of tie-ins. So I thought it was really fun. I do have some curious questions, and it was kind of funny because I was looking at the comments in YouTube on some of, first off, it's awesome that they are providing this to everyone for free to watch. So, these are 4 people that are going out and doing this. They don't have a production company behind them. I mean, they were doing this they're putting, same thing with Jeremy Corbell, putting their own dimes behind this and going out to research this stuff. I'm wondering I don't want to do a lot of spoilers, but they do show a couple times doing the Estes method, which essentially is going through all these radio frequencies with a blindfold on and listening, and just saying the words that are coming through that don't seem to be, DJs or music or what have you, and asking questions. I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain without seeing it. Once you see it, you'll be like, I got it.
It's like doing the Bird Box challenge with the radio.
That possibly, yes. Okay. But I'm wondering, like, did they also record what Connor was listening to, so they could play back and listen and see, like, oh, let's listen to what he was hearing. Do we hear the same things? Do we hear different things? Or is that something that's just can't be recorded? I think that's just kind of one of the main questions I had while watching, just because I was super curious.
Shane, as an investigator, I'd love to hear what you thought of Hellier.
Yeah, so paranormal's not my thing, and so I'm unfamiliar with a lot of it, but I thought, first of all, they were very likable. It was clear they're very intelligent and experienced, and what I appreciated about it was it really kind of gave me insight into what it's like to conduct a paranormal investigation. And so not just the techniques like Maureen had mentioned there, but just the the research that they had to do, sort of the back end of it, and then when they finally kind of launched into it and physically went there, and then how kind of hard it was to get people to talk and connect some dots. But then all these weird things that happened along the way, the synchronicity, it was pretty fascinating. And I know it's kind of overused, but I think they did a good job of showing how, the process can be very intriguing and satisfying in itself.
And frustrating at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
What do you think, Ryan?
I really liked it. For someone, again, like Shane, who hasn't done much in the world of paranormal, it was interesting to see a real investigation, not these like slick edited things that we see for like 40 minutes on TV. Right. This was, a 5 episode series, and they were each like almost over an hour long, and there's a lot of moments of like nothing happening or dead ends, this, that, and at first I was like, oh, this is kind of getting a little tedious, but then I put myself in their shoes and I'm like, wow, I can't even imagine what it must have been like to like just sit there and like feel defeated and like hit every dead end you could, to start to think that maybe this was all some elaborate prank. I don't know, but the big thing I really liked was this wasn't just about like goblins or these creatures that were taunting this man and his family that Greg, Dana, and Carl go and investigate, and Connor. It was about that synchronicity aspect, and I also found myself like, when they were having these weird synchronicities and showing how powerful they were for them, I'm gonna admit it was hard for me to relate or to see the power in those connections as they were having them. And I was a little critical. I'm like, I don't see the meaning. I don't see the dots connecting. And then after I finished watching it the next day, I started like relaying my own synchronicities to my girlfriend, and she's like, Ryan, you're doing the same thing. Like, it means something to you. Those synchronicities are for you. They're powerful to you. It's a personal thing. So I then, looked back and said, okay, whatever these connections were they were making in this investigation in Hellier and beyond, it was important to them, and we're along for their journey. So I kind of stripped myself of that critical eye and just dove right in. And I can guarantee you, so many John Keel books are going to be ordered after people see this thing.
Oh, yeah.
I just ordered 2 on Amazon last night at like 3 a.m. So going down the rabbit hole myself now.
That's so funny.
One thing I want to say is, so I think as researchers or journalists and what have you, we've all gotten these emails similar to, this David Christie guy. Yeah. And, for me, it is so hard to analyze what is so batshit crazy that it cannot be true, or is batshit crazy enough that it actually might have some truth to it. It's very hard to analyze those emails. And again, it's not like we're funded by some outside source. Like, how do you make a decision on which case you're like, all right, we're actually going to load up the car and we're going to spend a week paying for lodging and doing this investigation. So watching the series and seeing their like doubts when it came to like, is this an elaborate, like, have we been led on? Is this a hoax? Mm-hmm. What's going on? I felt their heart, like their dread. Yeah. And like knowing like, oh my gosh, did I just waste a bunch of money?
Yeah, that was dramatic.
Yeah. But at the same time, I think that the whole moral of the story too was that they had like a really good time investigating not this case, because this was related to, again, all these old cases, just going out and doing actual work in the field. That's where, we all want to be and we don't always get to be. And so I commend them for going out and doing it.
They do a really good job of showing what that experience is like and taking you along the journey. So, I think it's so much fun, not just because this is a field that I'm a part of, but I think, anybody who is a fan or is interested in the weird, definitely check it out. All 5 episodes of Hellier are available for free on Amazon Prime, YouTube, Vimeo, and at Hellier.tv. The website also contains episode descriptions, downloads, detailed series information, behind-the-scenes looks, and special features. So if this series intrigues you at all, swing by Hellier.tv and check it out. Well, citizens, as we wrap up this episode, we invite you to come join us in the Rogue Planet Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/Rogue Planet, and let us know what you thought of the second episode of Project Blue Book, what you thought of Hellier, or anything else UFO related that's on your mind. You can always find more episodes of Unknown at Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, iHeartRadio, YouTube, all the podcast places. Big thanks to our talented friend and fellow Rogue Planeteer Caleb Hanks for the show's intro and outro music. Of course, you can always find this show at rogueplanet.tv, because Unknown is a Rogue Planet production. Rogueplanet.tv is your home for all the strange. It's also where you can get your own Unknown t-shirt from the Rogue Planet store. Just go to store.rogueplanet.tv. Thanks again for hanging out with us today. I'm Jason McClellan.
I'm an underweather Maureen Elsberry.
I'm Ryan Sprague.
And I'm Shane Hurd.
Do us a favor, friends. Always treat the UFO subject with the cautious and responsible skepticism it deserves. Question everything. Have the courage to form your own opinions. Keep truth as the focus of your quest, even if the truth conflicts with your own opinions. And, of course, stay strange.